Okay, so Iroh is a lot of people's favorite character. He is a lot of people's comfort character. And I don't want to, I guess, damage that for anyone. Like, that's not my intention here. But at the same time, Iroh has a bit of a reputation. Iroh is often flattened into a very one-dimensional character of someone who essentially exists to give quotes for mom refrigerator magnets and such. And there is value in that, and there's a lot of incredible wisdom and thoughtful messaging and role modeling that Iroh managed to embody for a lot of people growing up, including myself. It has been spoken of to death how Iroh represents a very positive messaging about masculinity and the such. But it also kind of overlooks how actually rather complicated his character is, and where his character frequently, if not almost entirely, stumbles and struggles and fails at what he strives for, and how, in a lot of ways, that makes him more compelling, not less. So I want to take some time just to discuss Iroh's litany of character flaws and mistakes, and just give us a moment to acknowledge the fact that he has made these kind of errors. And on that note, here's an exhaustive list of Uncle Iroh's war crimes. So starting way back, this will come as a shock to many of you, but Iroh was an imperialist. He's a colonizer. I know. One of the greatest Fire Nation generals of all time did a wee bit of an oopsie doopsie's imperialism. Like, we get a flashback of him having a jolly good time laughing to himself as he writes a letter to Azula and Zuko about him burning down an Earth Kingdom village. Iroh has straight up killed people in the name of the Fire Nation, and that is known, that is part of his backstory, and that's an important thing to understand him for his future actions. This is Iroh at a much earlier part of his life. Where this falls relative to a lot of Iroh's past is a bit unclear, but Iroh was a part of the Fire Nation war machine for the vast majority of his life, as far as we know. He participated in, was glorified by, won all the accolades for, and as far as we see, essentially was a model modern general. Now, all of us, I think, at our first instinct is I'm sure Iroh was one of the good ones. But I would encourage interrogating that instinct for several reasons. Iroh changed. His son died, he retired from the army, but he did start, literally, being in the line for the throne, being raised by a Zulon, was being shaped for that image, and he didn't do it. He didn't become the Fire Lord, he went on some spirit quest or whatever the heck, and became an entirely different person. But that is still part of his past, and that sets the tone for where he goes with that in what I actually really want to talk about, which is Iroh over the course of his journey. Iroh goes on his tour with Zuko out of a sense of, who even knows, maybe it's guilt for feeling responsible for Zuko's predicament by being allowed into the war room. More likely, it's a lot of fatherly projected love towards him over his dead son. It's definitely a lot of that. There's a lot of things going on in there, but the gist of it is that Iroh kindly does choose to accompany Zuko for 3 entire years, essentially out of nothing more than a selfless desire to protect his troubled nephew. And I'm gonna be real, he's pretty bad at it. He's if you really I know he's really much respected as this incredible uncle figure that's doing the best he can. He really isn't in a lot of ways. Iroh is defined by his utter moral complacency in almost the entirety of the show. Up until the moment it is the least useful, Iroh is complacent. Yeah, Iroh stands up for his belief at the Northern Water Tribe against the spirits. But he didn't stand up Kyoshi Island was burning down. You drawing the line at some koi fish, buddy? Are those when the lives matter? Pal? Something broke Iroh during the war. We don't know exactly what it was. I mean, yes, we do. Iroh's son died. And ever since then, as far as we can tell, Iroh is just a mess of a person in terms of just hedonism. He is defined by hedonism. And hedonism is probably one of his greatest character flaws, and it leads to just an innumerable number of mistakes that I'm just going to enumerate anyways. He's just so willing to let things happen. Iroh just falling asleep in a pool and getting captured for a week because he wanted to lounge after Zuko was warning him he had to go. Oh yeah, also that time he fire bent tea in front of Jet. and made someone like go after a manhunt for him just because he wanted the tea to be hotter right there. That wasn't the wisest thing to do. There's also that time that he took a poisonous plant and made it into a tea because, again, he just really wanted some of that sweet tea action. This is all fine. These aren't war crimes or anything, but like, dude is living for hedonism, and it often does cause a lot of problems. Like, it's not just him being cute. I mean, it is also him being cute. Let's not lie. But like, he is responsible for far more of the problems that Zuko runs into on his journey than Zuko often is. I would even wrap in like what is probably like the most unfortunate, poorly aged thing that has happened with Iroh, which is his very handsy approach with June. Like, yes, he is being a chivalrous pervert, and Avatar is drawing lots of inspiration from a lot of chivalrous perverts in anime, but it did not age well. And as it is, it looks like the Avatar folks are actually looking to, for some unspeakable reason, looking to relitigate this by creating a new comic to address it. Yeah, that's coming. We'll see if this video gets up by then. Iroh's lecherous nature gets toned down over the time. Like, he continues to be a unrepentant flirt, and in a lot of other contexts, like with using it to schmooze his way into illegal immigration, we love that. Regardless, as much as we hate to say it, as presented, Iroh is someone who doesn't respect women's agency over their own bodies. Iroh was not paralyzed, June was, and he treated her body like an object. I'm not even going to get into the possible implications on his hedonism for that, but like, at the very least, this is not a gold star for Iroh.
Where's your creepy grandpa?
Getting back to his journey with Zuko, though. He causes a bunch of sidetracks and oopsie-doopsie goofs, but like, you know, he's still a good, loving father figure for Zuko. And he is. That I can't take that away from him. You got me there. He is a loving father figure for Zuko. But it could be there's a lot to be said about, well, how effective, honestly, is Iroh for Zuko's journey? Ultimately, Zuko gets where he needs to, and Iroh was a part of that. But a lot of what Iroh gives to Zuko isn't quite as good an advice as you might think, and it often does lead Zuko astray. In fact, I would say a lot of Zuko's missteps often are indirectly a reaction to Iroh, even if it comes from the place of best intentions. Like, in Season 1, I would say, I mean, Zuko just doesn't listen to Iroh at all. So, you know, Iroh doesn't really do anything negative there, because Iroh's words just bounce off of Zuko. But like, in Season 2, when Zuko does start actually listening to Iroh, it's honestly kind of hit and miss. Iroh is a shoulder to like hold Zuko's pain and struggles, and Zuko and Iroh tries to counsel Zuko to do the right thing. Most of the time, Iroh fails to push Zuko towards being a better person. A lot of Zuko's choices, Iroh gives advice, and Zuko does his own thing. But Iroh treats Zuko like a project. He sees Zuko as like a mission, help Zuko fulfill his destiny. And we never actually hear specifically that he does have visions of the future, it seems, but not specifically about Zuko. But he seems to believe that Zuko is destined to be good and join the Avatar, and he has this whole plan set up for Zuko. There's a lot of heavy implication for that, and his action only really makes sense through that lens. Especially like the thing with the Crossroads of Destiny. It's time for you to choose, Zuko. It's time for you to choose good. There's like this moment early on where they're starting to fall on hard times, and Zuko starts stealing from rich people to like fund his own habits, and Iroh sees it and takes it as a sign that Zuko is troubled, that he needs a heavier hand of support, and that he puts him aside and says that, no, Zuko, you cannot lose hope on this. And like there is a simple kind of honor in poverty, and no, honey, no, being poor is not honor. Do not romanticize your own suffering. like that's what Iroh's doing here. He is romanticizing suffering as that is how he seems to frame his own life and Zuko's life. He believes in destiny, he believes in providence, he believes that things will work out the way that they should, and hey, he's proven right. But as far as actual practical advice goes, Zuko correctly identifies that, bruh, I need some space from all this. And he leaves Iroh, and that is kind of on Iroh. Like, Iroh is so heavy-handed with Zuko. Constantly heavy-handed with Zuko. And yes, Zuko is a hot mess. He is a disaster of a little fire sprite. But, like, this kid needs to grow up, and Iroh often is holding his hand when Zuko needs to figure out his own value system and his own lessons. And at a certain point, Iroh does become a crutch for Zuko's development. And Zuko sees that, I think. And I think that is a big reason why Zuko walks away. As Toph points out, Iroh speaks to Zuko, obviously, as a mentor figure, when sometimes he needs to speak to him as a loved one. As someone who just wants him to know, that needs Zuko to know that he cares and he's here for them. Sometimes Zuko doesn't need advice, sometimes he just needs to be loved. That you're not just this entirely one-sided relationship with him. Because that's the dynamic that Iroh has developed. A very one-sided relationship with Zuko. It is suffocating for Zuko's own emotional development. And Zuko leaves. And Zuko does learn and grow some from that. And that separation was important for him. Sure hope that doesn't have to happen again. Iroh's excessive hand-holding of Zuko leads to so much stuff. Like we love that moment where he walks up to Zuko and says, "And then what?" Like, it's great. It's worth a lot of memes. We love it. But, like, Iroh at that moment, and for the rest of that season up until what inevitably happens, becomes very direct and uncloaked in his efforts to shape Zuko the way that he thinks Zuko should be shaped. While Zuko's sick, Iroh's musing to him like, "You're going through a metamorphosis. It won't be pretty, but afterwards you'll become the beautiful prince that you were always meant to be." As if, he's not already that. Or like trying to be like, "You should be happy with this small tea shop. This is why so many good things are happening to us." He is projecting what he thinks is a good life for Zuko onto Zuko. As he always has been. He's always been doing that. That's a lot of the root of a lot of his advice has been coming from this place of believing he knows what's best for Zuko. If only his son, his nephew, just wasn't so stubborn about it. And like, in time he'll see my perspective. And he sees a lot of Iroh's perspective. But Iroh, ironically, isn't being very humble here. And there's nothing wrong with, not fully embodying the advice that you have to give out. But he doesn't. And I think he learns that. And I think after his big fuck up with Zuko in the finale, where Zuko does choose Azula, I think, personally, that's why he refuses to talk to Zuko. I think that's why he turns away until Zuko just comes up and does nothing but bother him about it, that he chooses to give him some information about the past, some context. And actually, these scrolls about the past is probably why Iroh thinks Zuko's destined to like right the wrongs of his ancestry, because he's the grandson of Roku and Sozin, and he has this big destiny because he is the mixture of these two bloodlines or whatever fucking weird eugenics-y shit's going on there. All I'm saying is, Iroh, maybe you should lay off a little bit. Maybe just let this kid figure his own shit out. Maybe. One thing I think that's really cool is that I think Zuko's drive, the journey of Zuko being this incredibly driven man, does rub off on Iroh some. It does help shape him. Iroh's whole story is about him sitting back and being almost helpless to the war that exists around him.
His advice literally goes from never give up without a fight to, hey, maybe keep your head down and don't say anything if anyone brings up some war crimes.
Like, he takes actions, but for the most part, he's mostly just resigned himself to enjoying his life, despite how much immense power he could be wielding to fight back. After all of that, he eventually does take very direct action, and I like to think that he got some of that drive from his experiences with Zuko in his unending quest towards doing what he saw as hopeless. There's also a whole other thing to be said about like his weird relationship with Azula, where he's totally right about the nature of that, like, yeah, she's crazy and that she needs to go down, but he also totally doesn't seem to get her as a kid. Like, he sends her little dolly of an Earth Kingdom girl that she was totally not about. Like, he never seemed to really be there for Azula for some reason, but was totally down to be there for Zuko. Maybe because he sees her as a little sociopath and a lost cause. Who knows? I mean, I guess he did kind of just say that outright. Eesh. Are we gonna add that to the list? Let's add that to the list. Adding all that up, how much did Iroh really help Zuko, like lead Zuko on the right path there? Zuko led Zuko on the right path there. Iroh was a presence that was felt and important in Zuko's life, but Zuko's always been a fundamentally kind person, and whether or not Iroh, I don't think Iroh made Zuko a good person. I don't think Iroh was like necessary even for Zuko to become a good person. He was there and he tried to help and he fucked up a lot, but he was a good friend who mattered a lot in Zuko's life. But he's not like a savior. He's not like the secret hero of the story. He is a flawed man who doesn't know how to right his own mistakes and is traveling with another flawed man, and together they eventually found a mutual source of peace. But like, Iroh's his own guy, and Iroh came to his own conclusions about what he wanted in his life. And what he wanted wasn't power. What he wanted was peace, a simple life, friends, and a retirement. That's not for everyone, and a lot of Iroh's advice often comes from a place of assuming it is. And he learns. He does. And like, to Iroh's credit, he does eventually, on his own, separated from Zuko, gets fucking jacked in prison, pulls a don't come to school tomorrow, does a one-man prison break, calls up all his homies, being like, yo, you want to take down Boss Sing Se? It's good. Iroh does come to this place where he rises above his hedonism to actually rediscover a fire within himself, find his values, and, actualize them. Iroh coming to liberate Boss Sing Se is the ultimate fulfillment of his character journey towards no longer being a complicit member of the war front. Like, yes, Iroh burned down a lot of villages, and if there's people in the Fire Nation who will never forgive him, that is their prerogative. Honestly, Iroh doesn't need forgiveness. Just like Azula, Iroh is his own person and is capable of change whether or not he can make up for his past. Maybe he can't. If you feel that way, that's fine. This whole song and dance people have to do around redeeming imperialists is missing the fucking point. Iroh is a person who changed, and that is something people are capable of. And in his own flawed, constantly failing way, he worked towards finding his own redemption to himself. He found his own peace. He found his own way to reconcile his morality, and that's not exactly the way that was right for Zuko. It sure didn't do Azula any good. And given how incredibly central and powerful he is in the royal family, there is a lot that could be said for how much more he could have done, and how much, and how stopping right before ending the world because your son died isn't exactly the most compelling argument for a deep moral virtuosity inside of you. But he found his own way there, just like everyone else did. All this to say, electric chair.